Question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? According to Bennett et al., all media productions take place in the light of other media productions. This quote relates to my short film, as I have predominantly conformed towards stereotypical codes and conventions in order to create a successful psychological thriller film. Before starting to create my film, I researched into other psychological thrillers in order to see how they were constructed. I specifically looked at 3 different films and analysed their codes and conventions. Branston and Stafford, 1999, argue that all genres have a specific set of codes and conventions. This was true of my research into the thriller genre. The first film I looked at was Christopher Nolan's first short film Doodlebug, created in 1997. This film was the same genre that I was looking to create, so many conventions I used were pastiche from this film. In the psychological thriller film, there were a lot of close-up shots of the protagonist character. I incorporated many of these shot types into my own film, as it helped convey the emotion of the protagonist, as stereotypically, within a psychological thriller, the protagonist's characteristics consist of being on edge frequently. Therefore, the use of close-up shots would help the audience associate well with the character. Also, when I created the film, I wanted it to be in black and white. In my research, I noticed this was a stereotypical convention of a thriller horror film. I noticed again that in one of the films I analysed, Doodlebug, they used this convention in the film, and I believe it worked well as it helped create the eerie atmosphere that the audience experiences. Another short film I analysed before creating my product was Paranormal, a short film which was distributed on YouTube by Lucas Disparo. Within the opening of the film, it begins with a flashback in a dream. In my film, I also incorporated this convention. The flashback I used within my film, I believed helped create the background for my protagonist, so my chosen target audience would empathise with her throughout the duration. Within my film, I had eerie music playing throughout the duration. With all the films I watched, this convention was used. The eerie music helped to build suspense throughout my film, creating an enigmatic ending with the music building up towards the end. I do, however, believe that in my film I have challenged the stereotypical conventions of dialogue and sound effects. Dialogue is often used in all genres of films and helps the audience to understand the narrative. For the storyline I was going for, I didn't believe dialogue was necessary, one of the reasons being that there was only one character seen throughout the film, so she doesn't actually interact with anyone. I also believe that due to me subverting this convention, it helped my film as it doesn't limit my target audience. The use of no present dialogue means that it can be understood by anyone in any language. In the film The Open Door, there was a female protagonist present. This is a stereotypical convention in a thriller, as the connotations of a female are vulnerability, and she is also seen as a damsel in distress. I did use a female protagonist to create a sense of vulnerability. However, I also subverted the stereotype of the antagonist. As my protagonist is also my antagonist, it creates characteristics of her being in control and powerful for a female. This conforms towards what Neil, 1990, argued. He argued that genre must have dynamic qualities to keep audiences interested. For example, the film Alien has a female action hero instead of a stereotypical male. To develop a convention like this in my film, my female is both a protagonist and antagonist character. Within thriller films, my research proved that stereotypically males would play the antagonist role. When creating the name for my film, I came up with the mind game. Many psychological thrillers have titles that have negative connotations, one example being The Black Swan. The use of the word black gives negative connotations, and black is also a colour associated with the thriller genre. Another example of this is Shutter Island. The connotations of the word island can lead to isolation, and the word shutter connotes a sense of restriction. In the same way as these titles for the films, the word mind game gives connotations of the genre being psychological. During my research process, I used Google to look into stereotypical conventions of thriller and horror films. During this process, I hadn't yet come up with a narrative of my film. With the codes and conventions of horror films, a stereotypical location would be an isolated building. The location I used fulfilled the isolated look that would help create mystery and an eerie atmosphere for my target audience. An example of a real media product that conveys the use of isolation is in the 2001 film The Hole, where 4 students are locked in a bomb shelter. When researching into codes and conventions of specific thriller films, I found it common that props are commonly used in order to convey specific meanings within the text. Examples being a weapon like a knife. The props I used in my film consisted of the replicated dollhouse of the isolated setting, which helped to create the mystery of the narrative. The use of a mirror in a psychological thriller is also a common code and convention which I pastiched into my own film. The mirror helps to foreshadow the darkness in my protagonist's character. In a similar way, the Black Swan also went with creating this effect. In terms of mise-en-scene and makeup, I used prosthetics of creating a cut to help create the horror element of the film. The simple use of this element and the prop of knives are used in many thriller and horror films. In The Open Door that I analysed before creating my film, the use of knives helped to foreshadow future events within the film. I also had the use of simple props to make it appear that the genre of the film was a thriller. As my film is a psychological thriller, I believe it is important to create realism. I did this through the use of mise-en-scene elements of costume by using simple clothing. Both my protagonist character in the flashback and in the present day are wearing nightwear. This helps to signify the time of day to create the eerie atmosphere. The way in which it helps create the realism in the film is that the protagonist character appears to be an average teenager. Like in the short film Paranormal, the fact that he is wearing everyday clothes helps to emphasise him being your average teenage boy. My first ancillary product, I created a film poster to help advertise my film. Though the media texts I analysed to help create my film poster were blockbuster films, and mine was an indie film, I was able to use these to help understand conventions of posters of a similar film genre. I could then use these conventions from these posters and either develop or pastiche them into my own product. The 5 film posters that I gained inspiration from were The Black Swan, Shutter Island, The Butterfly Effect, The Forgotten and The Broken. Within all the film posters there was a consistent house style of all the fonts and colours used. For my film posters, I used the colours black, white and red, as these were the iconic colours used within my film. I believe that it is important to create and keep the house style consistent, and I planned on using these colours in both of my ancillaries. I do think I subverted the convention of my main image, as it was in black and white, and usually film posters are in colour. However, I did this to also keep my house style consistent. As my film was edited in black and white, I do not think a colour photograph would have had the same effect. Another way in which I believe I develop codes and conventions of movie posters is the use of my image being a still from the film. I believe this worked well as it gives narrative clues to the audience, with the prop of the mirror present, which emphasises the darkness of the protagonist's character. As social media is an important aspect in the media society, I have pastiched the convention of displaying them on my poster, which also helps to cross-promote my film, as this helps to convey the use of horizontal integration. This could be seen as subverting stereotypical conventions, as the film posters I have used to gain information from all include a link to the website, but they do not display any social media icons. Throughout the use of all the media text I analysed before creating my film poster, there is a consistent use of taglines present, which are there to help give narrative clues of the film. I have too incorporated this into my film, as it gives an insight towards the narrative for my target audience. For my second ancillary product, I created a film review, as it helps the audience decide what are the positive and negative aspects of the film. When picking film reviews to annotate, I used a mixture of ones of a similar genre to my own, and also some that were more action-based films. However, the 5 film reviews I advertised all had a similar layout, therefore I believe I could successfully use these as inspiration to create a film review of my own at a professional standard. The most prominent aspect I noticed when looking at all these film posters was the size of the image. On all the reviews I annotated, the image was taking up a significant amount of review space. I chose an image from the flashback within my film and used it on one side of my double-page spread. This is a convention which I pastiche from many of the film reviews I annotated, and believe this helped create a successful review. It is a way of giving the audience narrative clues through the use of images. The one convention which I believe I developed is, like my previous ancillary, the use of the image being in black and white, as all the other films I gained inspiration from were in colour. The use of me subverting this, I believe, helped the success of my film review, as throughout all of my products, my film, my poster and my review, I have kept my images consistent by using black and white, as my film itself was edited in black and white. In terms of the layout of the reviews, I researched into, and it was apparent that the review was split into columns with a significant view of the title. All of the 5 reviews I researched into had 3 columns that helped separate the text evenly. This is something I used when creating mine, as the outcome made it easier to read. There was a constant use of graphics and pull quotes within the review, which is a stereotypical convention of a review. Using these to help create professionalism to the outcome. Sticking to my house style, I incorporated a graphic saying Movie of the Month, using the colours of black, white and red, which I pastiched from the review Pirates of the Caribbean. The use of the graphic would have been a positive effect on the target audience reading the review, as it gives positive overall connotations of the film. To create a successful review, there are simple conventions I could see on all of the reviews I researched into, and that was that they all had page numbers placed consistently at the bottom, along with the title of the magazine. I incorporated these into my own film review, as I believe it made it look more professional. The purpose of both of my ancillaries also encoded the preferred reading, Stuart Hall 1990, of my film to my target audience. The preferred reading of my film being a dynamic thriller film that's not just for entertainment purposes. Therefore, this proves that my media product uses, develops and challenges forms and conventions of media texts.